how did you get started as a writer, and kind of what brought you to this point with Vertigo and DC?
I always wanted to be a writer. Initially, I thought it was going to be film, and then I thought it was going to be novels, and then I landed in the middle, and I'm doing comics. I still want to do theater and books at some point.
I was reading an interview that you have a lot of notebooks. As a writer, how important is it for notebooks, and what are notebooks to you?
I would genuinely say when I started keeping notebooks is when I would consider that I started taking writing seriously. I'd always sort of write scattered before, but there's that whole thing of you are always going to forget things. You are always going to forget things, and you write down like weird stuff, or you go back and you look at it and you go like, I have no idea what that was, but I'm going to use it anyway. It fits somewhere. Warren Ellis said a really good thing once, which is that Stephen King says you shouldn't keep notebooks because if you've got a really good idea, you'll remember it, but you are not Stephen King.
Do you have a traditional background in writing? Kind of how did you get started in writing? You talked that you were a teacher before. What kind of...
yeah, I was a tutor. I was
a tutor.
Never formal enough to be a teacher. But yeah, I mean, I did a degree in... I started doing a degree in film. I kind of hated it because it was far more geared towards journalism, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make films. I switched to a literature course, which I liked a lot more. So rather than any sort of formal writing training, I was far more interested in sort of reverse engineering why things work. Like, why do Charles Dickens stories keep dragging you forward? Why do you keep wanting to turn the page all the time? So I kind of did it backwards, essentially.
Now, Lucifer is an established character. There's a lore, there's a canon, there's a mythology. What do you want to add to that mythology? And as a writer, do you feel a little bit of a creative hamper because there's already such an established history?
Not at all. Like, if we're talking about the character, it's within the Sandman Universe, then yeah, there's loads of stuff already, but we are looking at probably the character with the most the most stories in the Western canon. So there are so many other stories for us to, or pieces of folklore or myth or whatever, for us to pick up and go like, let's see how this fits into our version of Lucifer. Or we look at other characters and we go like, how he's essentially a metaphor for the darkness in us. So we can talk about any sort of human pain or suffering, and we can fit Lucifer in, and he will have a place there. So there's so many. I could write a Lucifer story every month forever, I think, and not run out.
Is there any like current direction or a current mythology or a point of the story that you're specifically looking for at this point in time?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing I sort of wanted to do with him was take him and break him, because he's this super powerful character, and I wanted to see how he'd react if he had to really, really suffer the way we do. So on our first arc, he's blind, he's broken, he doesn't know where he is. So kind of, I guess, entropy is the sort of theme of the first arc, and it's him going through what human beings go through as we age.
Are there any specific tropes, or maybe, I don't want to say cliches, but themes that you're currently drawing from as far as a creative and kind of trying to build your stories and the character of Lucifer?
That's, I mean, sorry, I'm trying to work out like how to answer it like differently, because it's kind of that. Like, I'm really interested in looking at the religious aspects of Lucifer, but also, I guess more than just the religion, the spirituality of it, and sort of how you can have this sort of nihilist philosophy when you are a literal son of God. Where does that leave the rest of us?
Is there any stress or a little bit of weight because there's the established canon behind it? Do you feel any of that?
At the start, definitely. It was like, oh my God, just sort of coming in. The big thing, the moment that I had a like kind of a moment was when we were writing the Sandman Universe #1, and I was writing stuff for Matthew the Raven, and that was a real like, wow, this has so much weight behind it, because it's all a Sandman, but it's also Swamp Thing and all these books that I absolutely loved, like growing up. And now I was writing this character who kind of threads through all of them. But again, it's like I really wanted to take Lucifer and make our version of it, which kind of takes some of the pressure off, because this is my version. If you don't like my version, that's fair. You probably don't like me.
Because you're such a fan and you know the history and there's a personal, emotional attachment to it, what is it like as a writer, not only getting the opportunity to add to the story, but from a personal perspective, like you said, being a fan and caring about Swamp Thing or Sandman or any of these other stories, what is that personal fulfillment like?
I mean, yeah, it's amazing. It's the best gig you could hope for, but with that said, maybe the main pressure I would say that I feel is to not make this an exercise in nostalgia. I don't want to be like, do you remember this? Do you remember how cool that was? Do you remember like these great things that other people did? Let's just sit and think about that for a minute. It's like, I don't want to do any of that. Yeah. I want to push this forward into new places.
Do you have any advice for up and coming writers as far as what they should be looking to do, looking to practice, books they should be reading, things they should be studying?
Everything. Read as widely as possible. It's cliche advice, but it's the best advice. It's if you want to write superheroes, if you've just read superheroes, then you're not going to come up with stuff that other people haven't, because they've read all the superheroes too. So whatever it is, read as wide as you can and find stuff that other people haven't read and stuff that interests you, and go down weird little avenues and just let it happen.
What is generally your process for building out a script, a storyline, and an arc? Do you start with an outline? Do you start with a broad deal? Do you kind of break it down piece by piece? What is your process?
Yeah, I definitely start with an outline. That will be sort of you have a sort of idea for what you want to do with the thing. You end up with sort of 2/3 of a page, and then you start breaking that into single issues. You know, how's this going to look in monthly format, which it tends to start getting longer and longer and longer as you sort of go, oh, that will have to go there and stuff, and he starts. I mean, writing's essentially like a big puzzle piece. It's a lot of sort of working out logistics and stuff, as well as themes and everything. So a lot of outlining, and then half the time the scripts just go where they want to go anyway.
I know one of your ultimate goals is theater writing, but is there any other maybe stories or characters, or maybe it's something completely created by you that you want to tackle in the future that is the next step for you?
Essentially, yes, but I'm doing those things already and I can't talk about them. Yeah. There are characters I'd love to write, but I'm more interested in telling good stories than picking up specific characters that already have stories I like.
If you had one sentence to describe why someone should pick up Lucifer, what would it be?
I used this one earlier, but I liked it, so I'm going to go again. It's the dark mirror to the Sandman Universe.